Alright guys, Xyphoe here, and today we're taking a look at all the Ghostbusters games on the Amstrad CPC. Firstly, we'll be taking a look at the first Ghostbusters game and all its variations on the Amstrad. It's about 3 different versions actually. I'm going to get a little bit in-depth and nerdy about it. Next up will be Ghostbusters II. And I've secured a very exclusive and cool interview with Philip Oliver, he of the Oliver Twins, who programmed this game. We'll have a little Q&A with him in the second part of the video, and the final part we'll be looking at the real Ghostbusters, based on the animated TV series, comic book, and then into the arcades of coin-op. Finally, I converted to the Amstrad. So I'm just going to say, guys, quickly, I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. So these games mean an awful lot to me. And this is kind of my Halloween video as well for this year. So happy Halloween. I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. So of course we start off with the original Ghostbusters game. The CPC version was released in 1985 by Activision, which it seems came out a few months after the Atari C64 and Speccy versions, who managed to get a 1984 release, I believe, to coincide on the same day as the film's premiere. The CPC version, like the Speccy one, was done by James Software Limited for Activision. However, I've been unable to find out the actual names of the programmers, just that David Aubrey Jones did that not so good sounding sampled speech there. Originally designed by the legendary David Crane, fresh off the success of Pitfall for the Commodore 64 and Atari 800. And those versions of Ghostbusters provided the basis for all other conversions to the Atari 2600, Sega Master System, ZX Spectrum, NES, and of course the CPC. Now, Crane was working on a game called Car Wars, about cars fighting each other around a city. And when Activision snagged the license for the game early into the film's production, Crane changed Car Wars into Ghostbusters. Although when you see the size of the car in game, you will wonder just how it went into battle with other cars. Anyway, after the loading screen, it's karaoke time, which is a nice fun touch. And the music sounds fantastic, although the bouncing cursor doesn't always hit the words at the right times. Notice the logo, it's very nicely done and it's pointing to the left. However, on the box art though, the ghost is facing to the right, which is incorrect. But I'm nitpicking there like a nerd. Moving on, and starting the game up, we're presented with the next surprise of this bright orange screen with black text. Yuck. Where it appears we're at the bank trying to get a loan. Yes, we're forming our Ghostbusters franchise here with a bank loan of $10,000 to purchase our equipment. Handily, on the next screen, we can start spending this money on a car. Of course, all true fans will want to buy the 1963 hearse, which most closely resembles the Ecto-1 in the movie, which was a 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor, I believe. It's a wise choice for new players because it will allow you to carry all the items you need, including free ghost traps. Those who have completed the game already could enter a code on the previous screen to start with the money they made on the last game, so that this time they can perhaps get that high performance red sports car. But speaking of equipment, the next screen has you choosing monitoring equipment to purchase, which includes the famous PKE detector, an image intensifier to help see ghosts better, and a marshmallow sensor. I wonder what that could be for. The next equipment screen is for your capture gear, which aside from the necessary ghost traps has 2 bizarre items not seen in the movie, namely ghost bait and a ghost vacuum. More on those later. There is one more screen which allows you to buy a containment unit for storing lots of ghosts in, which will stop you having to go back to Ghostbusters HQ to empty your traps, but is way expensive. So we start the actual game up now, and we're presented with an overhead map of a rather small section of New York, with a maximum of 20 buildings to visit. At the bottom left of the map we can see our Ghostbusters Headquarters, where we can empty our traps, revive fallen Ghostbusters and recharge the proton packs. In the middle is a building labelled Zool, which is where we will eventually end up. Although, being a nerdy nitpicker again, shouldn't it be labelled Gozer instead, seeing as that's who you'll be fighting? Zool was just the name of the character that possesses Dana in the movie, also known as the Gatekeeper. In fact, you can see the Gatekeeper moving around the map as that little black triangular shape. And of course the Keymaster, Vince Clortho, who has possessed Lewis Tully as the key symbol there. Anyway, when the city PKE level hits 9,999, they will both converge on Spook Central in the middle of the map to bring on Gozer. You can then move on to Zool as long as you've made more money than you started with, which in playing for the first time is over $10,000 of course. Which is kind of strange that the city won't allow you to save the day because you are behind on your bills. It obviously doesn't matter now to the mayor that his city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportions, real wrath of God stuff, fire and brimstone coming down from the skies, rivers and seas boiling, 40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, the dead rising from the grave, human sacrifice, Xbox and PlayStation fanboys living together, mass hysteria. But there you go, make sure you pay your damn bills. So, anyway, you can make money by answering New York's calls for help, by busting ghosts at the flashing red buildings. If you have the PKE detector, then some might change colour to a purpley pink as you pass them by, so you might be able to get an early bust in. You'll see there's 4 ghosts converging into Zool from the 4 corners of the map. If you move over them, you can stop their progress. If they reach Zool, then the city PKE level suddenly jumps up. So really, it's a race against time to make as much money as possible. But what of those ghosts you stopped on the map? Well, time to talk about the driving section of the game. The most pointless gameplay of the whole licence, and surprising considering this was the main remaining bit from the Car Wars game by David Crane that he switched over from. So all that distance you covered in the map, you'll have to cover in the car, which is completely tedious as nothing happens at all. Apart from those ghosts you ran over on the city map, which is where the ghost vacuum comes into play. You can hoover them up to capture them, so when you next return to the map, the captured ghosts are respawned in their respective corner starting positions. However, hoovering those ghosts up is ridiculously easy, even with 4 all on one screen at the same time to suck up. Of course, who remembers a ghost vacuum from the movie? How silly! The driving section just serves to slow down the experience to a tedious crawl. I mean, couldn't they at least put some traffic in to avoid? I mean, come on, it's New York. The city is famous for its bad traffic. At last you arrive at your destination, a haunted house, with quite possibly a Class 5 full roaming vapour, and a real nasty one too. Unusually, it's outside the building. In fact, they're always outside in this game, and they seem to be the same ghost, Slimer's blue cousin perhaps. Also in the CPC version, it seems to be the same 2 buildings each time. So you have to move your 2 Ghostbusters into position. The first carries the trap, and it's advisable to go up as close to the building as possible and place it in the middle. Move him to the left, face him right, then hit the fire button to position him. Then bring on the second Ghostbuster. Move him into position facing left, wait for the ghost to move as low centre as possible, then hit the fire button to activate your proton beams. Fire once again to open the trap and hopefully bust that spook. Nice shooting, Tex. But of course, important safety tip, never cross the streams. You don't want all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light. Luckily in this game, apparently your backpacks short out in time and a trip to Ghostbusters HQ to recharge them is all that is needed, thankfully. Another method on these levels would be to have both Ghostbusters facing left, a little apart from each other. Then when the ghost passes the trap low to the right, activate your proton beams and start moving left. Both Ghostbusters move left at the same time and you push the poor Slimer over the trap for an easy win. So capturing a ghost, you earn $800 for this, but I remember in the movie they charged the hotel guy $5,000 I think. Anyway, seems a little bit measly. The ghost traps themselves do look a little odd, with some kind of grabbing thing moving vertically out of them. In the movie, of course, it's kind of a triangular beam of light we see. Oh well, it appears I'm nitpicking yet again, so whilst I am, I might as well rant about the ghosts that somehow escape from between the streams, or how you might be waiting a long damn time for the ghost to move into position before you can actually start your beams. And also, after this game screen, the music starts up all over again from the beginning, so I hope you like the Ghostbusters theme tune a lot. Anyway, back on the map screen, you're now waiting around for more calls to come in about hauntings, and if you're early into the start of the game, this unfortunately can mean a lot of waiting around, and the game begins to drag further. However, its sedentary pace for a lot of it means a relaxed, easygoing gaming experience, which is oddly kind of nice, with the game granting you a little bit of freedom, albeit limited, to choose which building you want to go to, what equipment to put on your car, and how you want to play the game. That's quite fun and interesting. It's an intriguing and fun concept which hasn't been fully realised perhaps, maybe because of the hardware limitations, and hampered by the game's origins. It says a lot that I'm more likely to come back to this game once in a while rather than the modern Ghostbusters the video game released in 2009, which, while surprisingly good, it was completely linear. One would have hoped that they would have taken inspiration from this game and implemented an open world city environment like GTA, where you started at the Ghostbusters HQ, Janine took calls, and off you went on your own path in the game. So when I'm playing this game, I often just leave the game going for a bit, go make a cup of tea or something, and allowing the ghosts to enter Xyphoe to bump up the PKE level of the city to give me a bit more of a challenge and move things on. Overall, the game is rather easy once you can regularly capture the ghosts. But eventually we start getting lots of calls coming in and things start hotting up. A new event starts happening, seemingly around when the city PKE gets to around 5,000, with the early appearance of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. The game taking a few artistic liberties here. Sadly though, it's not as exciting as you think or hope. As long as you have purchased the ghost bait, it's ridiculously easy to stop him. Just simply press the B key on your keyboard to drop the ghost bait and he's defeated. And a reward of a paltry $2,000 for your efforts. If you don't in time, and you must be a really crap not to, Mr. Stay Puft trashes the building and it's permanently damaged on the map, but you can still get calls for it. The mayor is also rather cross and both blames and fines you $4,000 for not stopping him. What a... Now before we get to Xyphoe, let's not forget the Ghostbusters Headquarters. We don't see much here, but note there's only 3 Ghostbusters. Where's Winston? Poor Winston, left out yet again. So anyway, the PKE level hits 9,999, plus the Keymaster and Gatekeeper arrive at Xyphoe, and hopefully you've made enough money to be allowed to enter. When you get there, you are confronted with the Marshmallow Man again, who seems to have shrunk in size dramatically. This time, you have to sneak 2 Ghostbusters past him, under him, which is easier said than done and possibly the hardest part of the game. Succeed and the game is won. Fail and you have to start all over again. Sadly though, unlike the other versions, there is no ending where you zoom up the building and close the portal, defeating Gozer. What a shame. And that is it. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass. The final screen gives you a $5,000 reward and an account number to use on a new game with your accumulated balance. Overall, the game just about wins through. It's an interesting idea that for the most part is well executed given the limitations of the target hardware, but perhaps falls a little short, possibly hampered being a conversion of a half-finished game and a rush to meet a tight deadline, but no excuse on the Amstrad version with this coming out months later. So those who played this as a kid will enjoy it the most due to the nostalgia factor, rose-tinted spectacles and all that, and hardcore Ghostbusters fans desperate for more action from the boys of the professional paranormal investigations and eliminations team will like this. Non-Ghostbusters fans, if they even do exist, who've never played this before, are probably advised to best avoid this one. In comparison to the other system versions, the CPC one holds up well. It's pretty much identical to the Commodore 64 and Atari original, apart from the missing end sequence, some minor bits of presentation, and slow sprite movement and flicker. But hold on, what's this? An enhanced version on disc on the CPC? Well, we'll have to check that out. So this is the enhanced for Amstrad disc version. I'm not sure how well publicised this release was, coming nearly 2 years after the original on cassette, but it's apparent even now people aren't aware of this version. On my original long play video, it took one comment by Tazong querying what happened to the ending for me to go check it out, and he was right. There's a disc version with lots of extra bits and improvements and the all-important ending, but comes with some new annoyances and problems though, which we will compare. Firstly, on the karaoke section, the logo now faces the correct way but doesn't look as good, but we do get the Ghostbusters lettering at the top there. For the karaoke text, we now have a down arrow instead of a circle, but it's missing the next line of lyrics below. And it's difficult to make out, but I think there are some slight differences on the music too. On the equipment screen, the forklift now makes a little noise as it goes about its business, and also a little animation on the fork. So, onto the main game screen, and now the sprites move a lot faster, with no flicker even when they clash. I guess with memory freed up, I suppose they must have double buffered the sprites. As you can see there, lots of flicker going on the original version. Now we come on to the car and driving section, and the most important thing now is that it arrives at the destination a heck of a lot quicker, but the most cool addition in this version is the flashing logo on top of the car. Also, as we're seeing in comparison here, the road markings no longer flicker, and as the enhanced version arrives at the destination, the original isn't even halfway there yet. After another disc load, we've now arrived at the all-important Ghostbusting section. The first thing I notice is the Ecto-1 sprite there, parked up, that's new. Secondly, there's no sprite flicker at all. On the original there was a slight amount of this. Thirdly, we have new buildings, not the same two buildings like in the original, I'll show you some of them later, and the proton streams are now angled much higher up, but most interestingly of all, we have a new ghost trap. So let's look at that close up in comparison to the original. And we'll see it's now a spiral shape instead of a ladder shape. The grabber, I guess I'll call it, isn't filled in. Plus it's a lot quicker, as we can see here in slow motion. Oh yes, the ghost vacuum on the car now has a sucking in noise, sadly missing here, apologies, and a little animation on the ghosts. And just quickly, here are a few of the new building types you can visit, but I should point out the biggest annoyance is a disk load for everything. I guess they haven't utilised 128k of memory, given this may have been released for the Amstrad 664, which had a disk drive that still had 64k of memory like the old 464. Anyway, so here's the Marshmallow Man Attack. I press B to drop bait, but the bait icon doesn't appear this time. But the Marshmallow Man sprite there isn't flickering like crazy, no flicker at all, and once defeated we'll see the ghost sprites zoom back into their respective corners. So the PK energy has now reached 9,999, and it's time at last to go to Zool as the Keymaster arrives there. Just say about the music, it now fades out, and I believe the difference to the original is that it has a different drum beat and percussion, which I don't think sounds as good. But I'll just take this opportunity now to summarise things on this enhanced version. Firstly, the good things. Gone is the sprite flicker. It moves a lot faster from the sprites to the driving section, arriving at the destination quicker. With the ghosts moving faster, the PK energy also goes faster, meaning the game is tougher. It was already too easy. We have a cool flashing logo on the car and some new sound effects like the ghost vacuum. And the music fades out, and we have a new Zool. And also we have a bigger Marshmallow Man, and of course, most importantly, we have the ending. As for bad things, well, it's disc loads for everything. It gets very annoying. The new Ghostbusters logo on the title screen doesn't look as good, but at least it faces the right way now. The new Ghost Trap, I'm not sure it looks better. Maybe, maybe not. The music I don't think sounds as good. And the Marshmallow Man Attack moves a lot slower, as we can see here, but it probably makes things a little easier. So there you go. I think this is probably the best version of Ghostbusters on the Amstrad to have. And for disc load, we now get the ending, a bit of graphical distortion as we zoom at the building, and the Ghostbusters finally close the portal to Gozer and her dimension from which she came from. Nice. There we go. And that's the ending. So yeah, definitely go for the enhanced version on disc over the cassette original. And that concludes Ghostbusters 1 on the Amstrad. But wait, don't tell me there's another different version of Ghostbusters. Oh my god, yes, the Ricochet budget tape release is completely missing the logo and lettering on the karaoke section. But who cares? Let's at last move on to its sequel, Ghostbusters 2. So on to Ghostbusters 2, released by Activision in 1989 to coincide with the movie's release or shortly after. I'm not sure the exact dates, but it was a huge hit, topping the charts, as did the movie itself. Although not many people like the movie compared to the original, but I loved Ghostbusters 2, the film, and I loved the game too. Now the coders behind the game were the Oliver twins, yes, those brothers who did the Dizzy series and other budget games of Codemasters. And I've managed to secure an interview, a chat and a Q&A with one half of the Oliver twins, Philip Oliver, who's very kindly lent me his time to have a good natter about the game, how it was made, the stories behind it, and other interesting things. And whilst we're chatting to him, I'll have some footage of the game. In fact, it's pretty much a full long play of the game. It's quite short. So here we go.
That's very kind of you. Say so, Xyphoe. We're very proud of all the games we made so many years ago, and our more recent games, obviously. And we love chatting about them. So we'd written a game called ISS, Incredible Shrinking Sphere. Well, we'd done the conversion for Stefan Ofnoska, who lived near Trowbridge, so near where we used to live. He'd produced the game on the Commodore 64 and needed it converted to the Amstrad and Spectrum. It was a kind of a Marble Madness inspired game. We're big fans of Marble Madness. There was some cash on the table. I think it was £10,000 to do this, and we thought, that's easy money. That looks quite an easy job. We were making lots of games for Codemasters at the time. We're talking 1988, I think. Yeah, 88. It seemed like quite an easy job. So we just thought, yeah, we'll just quietly do this one on the side. But very few people knew that we did it, because we didn't put our names on it. We put a friend's name on it who wanted to get into the games industry. We felt that our name was already quite big then, sort of the Oliver Twins brand, and it was always associated with Codemasters, and we didn't want to upset Codemasters. So we kept quiet about it and put our friend's name on the game. But that game went well, the conversion went well. He published through Activision. He struck a deal with Activision to do all the home computer versions of Ghostbusters 2, and he approached us in about the January of '89, saying that he's just done a deal with Activision for the rights, the home computer game rights of Ghostbusters. He's got a development contract. He's going to, with his wife and programmer and artist, produce the Commodore 64 version, the ST and the Amiga versions, and would we please convert to the Amstrad and Spectrum? Which, of course, we said yes. So Andrew and I were massive fans of Ghostbusters, as were most kids who grew up in the sort of 80s. It was an event when Ghostbusters came out. The music was top of the charts for a year or something. It was ridiculous. The computer game on the C64 by Steve Crane had gone absolutely nuts. I mean, the sales were ballistic. I actually personally didn't like the game, but I think an awful lot of people did like the game. We'd already been inspired to write Ghost Hunters a couple of years previously, which may have been inspired by playing the part of a person that would go and catch ghosts called Ghost Hunters, and that went very, very well. So we were already big fans. So when we were approached in the January, the deal was that we were converting from the game that was designed by Anna of Forcefield. She had got the script. Obviously, the studio was very precious about who saw what to do with the film, because obviously this was expected to be a blockbuster, so it was all very confidential. They got to see some photographs from storyboards and filming shoots, although they got to see very, very little, and then we got to see even less. We really only saw what was being produced in the games, from mainly the ST and the Amiga version, and then we were given those graphics and those games. But so the first time that we ever saw the film was at the screening, the preview screening for the journalists in Leicester Square, with people like Barry Norman sort of sitting next to us. But by that time the game was finished. I mean, this was the middle of the summer and the game was finished. So we couldn't sort of change anything even if we wanted to. But the three scenes that were designed seemed sensible. It seemed like we pick up the beginning of the story with lowering down into the sewers and the river of slime. The Statue of Liberty was a key moment in the scene and very iconic, with Statue of Liberty obviously, and then the rescuing of the baby from Vigo at the end of the game. You needed the wrap up. So if you're only going to have three games, they did seem like the right games to have. And they seemed classic arcade fun, which again is essential because we've got to make a game. Yes, the ST and the Amiga versions were the lead versions, with the Commodore 64 sort of trailing and being sort of converted from those. And we were kind of using the ST and Amiga as our benchmark to reference as well. All the graphics were given to us on Amiga discs, and then we would load them up on an Amiga, look at them, and then just put them alongside an Amstrad screen and then draw them into Panda sprites. So all of our graphics for all of our games were drawn in our own utility called Panda Sprites, which was published by Interceptor, and this allowed us to produce graphics very, very quickly and easily, just drawing each sprite that we needed, testing animations, and then we would output one file, and that would contain all of the graphics and all of the sprites, all in a really user-friendly format for us to then bolt into the game and the code. Worked very, very well. To be honest, we had absolutely no interfacing at all with Activision. Because we were so successful with Codemasters at the time, we'd stopped going and visiting other publishers, so we didn't visit Activision at all. They probably didn't even know we were involved in ISS. They would have known we were involved in Ghostbusters 2 because we put our names on it, and we were probably part of the sales pitch. When Stefan was doing the pitch to get the rights, he probably said, "Oh, and I've got the Oliver twins, obviously, doing the Amstrad and Spectrum," which would have carried some weight back then. And so we never went to Activision at all. We never met any of them. And in fact, it was only years later, things like Charles Cecil's name is actually on the credits. And we got to know who Charles Cecil was and meet him. We never knew any of these people. And as for feedback from the studios, if there was any feedback from Activision or the studio, we never saw it. To be honest, they've never ever mentioned it, and we never mentioned it to them. I have no idea. To be honest, it is slightly possible that they don't even know. It's actually possible that when they read this book, there'll be a few shocks in it, and this might be one of them. So the 3 arcade games that were designed for Ghostbusters 2 were designed by Anna. So we were really just kind of taking them across, but they were fairly standard affairs. I mean, they had scrolling in them, which I have to say we preferred to avoid. We'd done it in the professional ski simulator, but it is tough to do with a pixel map screen and an 8-bit processor. There's not enough processing speed really to copy that number of pixels around the screen smoothly. But that's what has been decided for the game. It made sense, so that's what we did. The last level was isometric 3D, a bit like Nightlaw and Alien 8, which when we first looked at it, it's like, whoa, that looks pretty tricky. But we had done the Pro Ski, which also did the isometric 3D, which was our homage to Marble Madness, just themed. So we were pretty confident that this wasn't a problem to achieve. Quite enjoyed arcade games ourselves. It's just the reason we hadn't tended to do arcade games is because the Amstrad and Spectrum had pixel map screens and were slow. So we tended to try to design games that didn't require a great deal of speed. It was interesting. Ghostbusters 2 received mixed reviews, is a professional way of putting it. Some of the versions got really slated, and some of them got really praised. And we were quite delighted that the Spectrum and Amstrad ones were the ones receiving the praise, whilst the ones that we were copying were actually not faring too well in terms of reviews, getting average or quite poor reviews in some cases. We were a little bit surprised because they were kind of the same game, but we were doing okay, so it was fine. We got Amstrad Action, which was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean the guys really liked us at Amstrad Action. We were the leading Amstrad developers at the time, and I think the game was pretty good for an Amstrad, and I think people probably expected more from Amigas and STs, and I think that was part of the problem. It's all in the book. It's all in the book. But no, I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, the contract was for £20,000, so double ISS, which was good money, and we were very happy about that. I don't think we haggled too hard. I think first time round he'd offered £10,000 for ISS, and we said yes. Ghostbusters came along, and I think he just offered 20, and we said, well, that's very good. We'll take it. Thank you very much. It was no royalties or anything like that. Unfortunately, and as you'll discover in our book, we didn't get all of it, and it all ended up in court, which was a little bit upsetting, but hey ho, such is life. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you all of it because it's all in the book. Okay. So, Chris Wilkins and Roger Keane, who wrote The History of Ocean and the History of US Gold, plus Spectrum in Pixels and Commodore 64 in Pixels, approached us to write the story of the Oliver twins. Well, actually, they originally wanted to write the story of Dizzy, but we sort of said, well, there's so much more, and we can make it a lot more interesting if we actually widen it out. At first, they were apprehensive. Well, it was Chris who runs the show. At first he was kind of apprehensive, but within 10 minutes of telling him a few stories, things like Ghostbusters 2, and other bits and pieces. It was like, oh, we've got to include that. Oh, we've got to include that. And before we knew it, it was like, okay, he said that it was right that it was the story of the older twins, but he wanted to make sure that Dizzy features very heavily. And we've got Steve, and I can't remember his surname, produced an absolutely fantastic cover within a couple of days, saying, how's about a cover like this? And it's obviously got Dizzy swinging across the front, which is brilliant. So it shouts Dizzy very, very loudly, but is the story of the older twins. And it's a story of just the first decade. We don't attempt to tell the story of Blitz, because Blitz ran for 20 years, has got 60 plus games, over 200 people. We're not going to try and cover all of that in this book. Will there ever be a book of that? I don't know. Let's see how this one goes. This one is about us. It's about our early work. It's a great celebration of 8-bit gaming, and the early start to the industry. And it kind of is a reflection of how kind of the UK games industry started. A couple of brothers in a bedroom. It's pretty much the archetypical story. We will be working on Sky Saga for a very, very long time. Sky Saga is a massive, awesome game, and we're just going to keep improving it and improving it and improving it for many, many years to come. And I would suggest that everybody listening go and try it. Just sign up at skysaga.com. It did, but we still had to copy them pixel across, because we had to have them in Panda Sprites. So, and of course, we had lots less resolution, and we didn't have any scaling software or anything. So I believe that we had to still put it up on the screen and then just look from one screen to the other screen to the other screen to the other screen, just copying pixels. So yeah, digitizing the old-fashioned way. No. So they were originated by Steve Green on the Amiga, and then we were given Amiga discs, and we'd load them up in D-Paint, I think it probably was, and then basically just put them on a screen alongside our Amstrad, and then copy as closely as we could by eye rather than through a tool. Because these days, I mean, everybody these days kind of thinks everything's so fast and so automated, but back then you just didn't have anything. I mean, some of the first programs we wrote, the first thing we wrote was an art package, because you couldn't plot pixels on the screen. You couldn't draw pictures on the screen because art packages didn't exist. So we kind of had to write our own. Everything was so rudimentary. Getting code from one computer to another, but there was no way you could get code from one computer to another. You just couldn't do it. That technology wasn't out there. So it was all quite basic, but we found ways to make it happen. I have to say, one of the fundamental things, and it's quite interesting when you load up our games on emulators, is that we were using CRT TVs with an RF cable. The pixel clarity is dreadful. Everything is very, very blurred. And when you're actually trying to copy pixel for pixel, it's actually hard to make out where the pixels are, because it's all so blurry and fuzzy. On Ghostbusters 2, let me think. We were quite surprised when watching the movie Ghostbusters 2 that the whole descent down into the sewers got reduced to about 2 seconds in the movie, and that was actually the whole of our first level was based on that, and in the script we believe it was a lot longer. But it hit the cutting room floor, I guess. Thank you very much, Xyphoe.
So guys, that was Philip Oliver there of the Oliver Twins. What a really, really lovely guy. In fact, our conversation went on long after those questions and answer session. We chatted away about all kinds of stuff, what they're up to, and some reminiscing about the old days and all that kind of stuff. And his brother is equally as nice as well. I met him a couple of years ago at the Play Blackpool convention. In fact, I did an interview with him there on video, and you can find that on my channel if you want to go and watch that. But yeah, guys, check out obviously the Oliver Twins and what they're up to at the moment with the Sky Saga game, and also go and get their book, which I believe is going to print right now. So what can I say? What else can I say here? Firstly, I'll just talk about the game. I do really love this game a lot. I remember, I think I got it for Christmas 1989, and I was overjoyed. I loved it. I think just the presentation is fantastic with the digitized pictures, all the loading screens as well. The music on before the levels as well by the ever excellent David Whittaker is just brilliant. Sound effects are good, graphics are fantastic throughout, maybe not so much on this final level in the museum. I think it's I don't quite like the orangey yellow colours, but it has been done in the it looks like the mode 1 for colour mode, and for that is actually pretty good. What's really good about this game is how closely it sort of follows the movie. Here I am sliming Janosch, and then after we slime Janosch, we've got to Vigo the Carpathian comes out the painting, and then we've got to blast him with the proton packs using 2 Ghostbusters simultaneously, which is pretty clever stuff because you switch between them and you can set them blasting away with their proton packs and move to another Ghostbuster, and they'll continue to do so. And also, before right at the start of this level, we went and rescued the baby and put it behind those boxes and packing crates, just like in the movie. And then finally, Vigo will possess Ray, just like in the movie, and then we've got to blast Ray and Vigo out of Ray into the painting, and we've won the game. So big points there for following the plot of the movie really well. I think, and as Philip said, it was very wise decision initially to base the game around 3 key scenes from the movie, and I think they've definitely chosen the right scenes to do. Even if the tunnel section was pretty short in the movie, it does make a good level in this game. So yeah, I think it's very deserving of its praise. I've got 94% in Amstrad Action Magazine, which we talked about earlier, and I'd give it a 9 out of 10 too. It's very hard to fault the game. Perhaps once you know what you're doing, it's perhaps a little easy. Perhaps could have done with maybe 1 more level just to sort of give a fuller package. But that's pretty nitpicking. It's a totally different game to the Ghostbusters 1 game, of course. It's hard to compare the two. And it's hard to say which one I prefer, actually. I do have a strange liking for the original Ghostbusters game, despite its faults. But arguably, Ghostbusters 2 is probably the better game overall. And yeah, we're about to defeat Vigo here. I'm going to blast Ray into the painting, and we will win the day. Yes. So that's all the movie-based Ghostbusters games, and we're going to move on now to a cartoon and comic book license, and it's an arcade conversion of the real Ghostbusters, which is coming up in just a sec. So alas guys, we come on to the final game we're looking at, the real Ghostbusters from Activision, released in 1988, actually a year before Ghostbusters 2, so we're not looking at things in chronological order, but I've saved this to last perhaps because it's the least interesting, and being a simple run and gun sort of shoot 'em up. scrolling in multiple directions. Now, this is of course based on the animated TV series The Real Ghostbusters, and it was called The Real because Filmation was making a cartoon simply known as Ghostbusters, which is a revamp of a 1970s series of the same name, hence legal issues. There was also cartoon, comic books, and also a magazine, and soon enough an arcade coin-op followed suit, which we're going to take a look at now so we can compare to the Amstrad's conversion from Activision. Now actually, the Ghostbusters game here is actually a reskinned version of a Japanese game called Maikyu Hunter G, probably not pronouncing that correctly, so it doesn't very much feel like a Ghostbusters game, just with redone graphics, although it does play a little bit differently. So here we are, starting off the first level, and quite nice music. And there you go, you've got like a proton gun which you shoot bullets out of, but once you've defeated like an enemy or a demon, they turn into like a ghost which you can suck up using your proton beam for extra points and stuff at the end of the level. And there are end of level guardians to defeat and all that kind of stuff. It was actually quite a popular arcade game at the time, although its shortcomings were quickly realised, and it gets really difficult later on, designed to like munch coins and credits very quickly. And moving on to the Amstrad version, here's the loading screen, and in game, well, we've only got 4 colours, so we're in mode 1, and the frame rate isn't brilliant, but it plays a decent version of the arcade game. And no music in game, I've just added this over the top, a few paltry sound effects, but we will compare next to the arcade version now, just so you guys can see. And obviously, yeah, frame rate really suffers on the Amstrad, as expected. But as I said, it does actually play rather decently. I should just warn you though that the game is known to be a bit buggy loading. I used to have problems loading it on my Amstrad, and that's from several different cassettes or discs. In fact, I had trouble loading it in the emulator, where I had to play around with quite a few settings, which is a bit strange. But yeah, it still actually covers the arcade game very well. You've got all the power-ups, you've got Slimer floating around you there protecting you. I think this pickup here is a shield. Oh, I've just died. There you go. So lots of action happening, and we're now coming up against an end of level guardian and boss, and there's plenty of levels in the game. It's just not much to write home about really. It's kind of why I've saved this to last. It's kind of okay. And we get nice little jingles and music like that. And so there you go, guys. I think I will leave it there. It's been a very long video and a very long time making. So I hope you enjoyed that. As for the Real Ghostbusters, yeah, it's probably a 6 or a 7 out of 10 for me. So happy Halloween. Leave a comment, like, subscribe and all that stuff. Thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Goodbye.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please click a like below, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And over that way, there's another video for you to check out. Xyphoe, out.